Okay, so we're live on YouTube. Hi, and my name is Devraj, and this session is called Talking About Trauma. Trauma, and it's like whenever I talk about trauma, I have to talk quite slow and kind of easily so it can be understood because there's a thing we have in our brain that's called limbic hijacking, which is like something they talk about in neuroscience, also in marketing, sales, and this kind of thing. And what it means is if your limbic mind, your midbrain from sort of mammals, is triggered or activated, it'll switch off your higher mind. So we kind of lose the capacity for some of our rational thought processes. And so talking about trauma, because trauma is so kind of endemic, and there are so many people who've experienced either traumatic events or traumatic conditioning, which is more stuff that goes on over a long period of time. It's like very easy to be triggered around any chat about trauma or any discussion about it, and then before the person knows it, they're kind of out of there. They're kind of out of there. Their rational facilities have been kind of switched off, and then I get people kind of messaging me, "Oh, I heard you talking about trauma the other day, and you were saying this," and I'm like, "Totally didn't say that," and or whatever, or they're like, "Wow, I thought I was listening, but I can't remember anything you said," and I also know this, when something's been spoken about that's triggering me, for sure, I kind of space off somewhere and lose it. So what I'm trying to say is, when I talk about trauma, it's good to talk fairly slowly, which can be challenging for me, and to give people space to take it in and ask questions or whatever, because we just get so easily triggered by this talk, because the reality is so many people have got some level of trauma in their system. That's just how I see it. I mean, you could say that's partly from my working with trauma a lot, so I've got a slightly skewed perspective, but it seems to me fairly endemic, really. And the thing, it's kind of sad, really, in the sense that, like I'm saying, it's hard often to cognitively understand trauma and what it really means, but it's not necessarily so difficult to move on from trauma. It's just that the way our mind kind of developed, our brain developed over the eons, the evolutionary period, means that we tend not to look at it. In fact, we tend to look pretty much anywhere else and distract ourselves from the kind of charge of repressed energy inside. We don't really want to look at the trauma and what went on, what happened. And so, because we don't look at it, it kind of stays there. It kind of stays there. And we adopt all sorts of other behaviors to avoid going into this part of our mind, this part of our being, to not get triggered by it. And when I look out at society, living in a city in the south of the UK, large amounts of society are basically about avoiding being triggered. I mean, people are also trying to get their needs met, find partners, friends, get a job, this kind of thing. But a lot of it also is about just avoiding any kind of deep triggering, and trying to keep a kind of smile on your face, or try and make yourself look good or whatever, to try and get the needs met. And in some ways it's incredibly primitive. It's also how it is. But with only a small societal shift, in perception, in how people are brought up, in how education happens, in how the media functions, not a massive great shift. A lot of people could move on from a lot of trauma and have very, very productive lives without a lot of drama, actually. And yeah, it's one of those things that when you first start to see that, it's like, whoa, why isn't this happening? And you're kind of up in arms, and why aren't we all moving on from trauma? It's really not that hard. Why don't we just get it together and move on from it? And then after a few years and maybe a decade in that kind of scene, you realize that life just isn't configured like that right now, and how it is how it is. And I can still be there for people and support them when they want support. And the idea that, wow, we can just change the whole world and get rid of trauma, which actually wouldn't be so hard if certain governmental media bodies really wanted to do it. It doesn't any longer kind of sit in my mind as like it's not motivating me massively. I'm okay with my work as a therapist and just putting out the bare bones of stuff for people who want to hear it. So if you have any questions, hopefully I've got the chat on here. Do feel free to stick one out. Hi Chris, hello. It's cool you said something because I wasn't really sure if the chat was working. I haven't done a live stream for like a month or so. I actually want to do a few more of them because they are quite popular. But let's break it down a little bit, trauma, because like I say, people space out and they don't want to think about it too much, and I understand, but actually it's really not very complicated. What you have, the residue, trauma is really something you cannot process in the moment, something you don't expect really from your genes, how you were born. We didn't expect certain stuff to happen, and so the brain has kind of fail-safe mechanisms and survival strategies to deal with extreme situations where perhaps in the first year of your life your mama is not really connected to you. We expect that, being mammals, we expect mama to just be there for the first year till we start to develop an ego. And when she's not there, then certain survival strategies and wounds get left inside the system, and those just continue to operate throughout our lives. Age about 1.5, 1.75, 2 years, we start to get the capacity to say the word no. And the word no is very important because up until that time, up until the age of about 2, we just go along with whatever's going on. We just go along because we got no idea of doing anything different. And then the first manifestation of our own will, is this word no. Dad says, come on, son, off we go. No. Mum says, come on, be a good girl, come just no. And freaking out and having a big fit. And if at that time, you get squashed, the parents come in real hard, they want to make sure that the child really gets it, under their control, then you develop, that's also invokes a survival strategy. You don't expect that. We do biologically expect to have parents which will control us a bit and which will give us boundaries, but we don't expect to get crushed. So when you get crushed, again, stuff gets triggered. It's like traumatic conditioning. The other common one is people, when they don't feel safe, they go into their mind. Even in the womb, this can happen. Just go into this kind of abstract mind world and stuff like that, and maybe in their whole life never really occupy their body to any meaningful degree. So there's all this trauma that can happen, and what's characteristic of it is that it leaves a residue in the body, and it leaves a residue kind of in the mind, in the thinking and the behavior. In the body, there's a charge, or there's areas of the muscle system which we've kind of cut off from. There's holding patterns. Maybe we've closed down at the throat, or closed down at the belly, closed down in the heart. And in the mind, we've just learned to negotiate our way through life without really confronting this charge, without really confronting it. And a big part of what is like what sustains us in this kind of traumatized state is society, and the basic belief that you cannot talk about your childhood and the bad stuff. The basic kind of message of much of society is like, you just need to front it out. You just need to front it out, look good, get your needs met as much as you can. Yeah, maybe you're a bit of a mess, but just keep fronting it out. And it's kind of unnecessary in a way, because if there wasn't such an obsession with keeping a good front on things, then a lot of trauma would fall away very quickly and society would really develop fast. But that hasn't really happened, and it's like no one really wants to be the first one. Or there are people that come out and speak about what's happened in their childhood, but there's still huge conditioning, societal conditioning, late adolescence. Don't talk about the childhood, don't talk about what might have gone wrong. Keep a good front on, keep going out there. I know people who have committed suicide rather than talk about childhood. It's as heavy as that. Well, something happened there. I don't quite know what happened, but I'm back. Appreciate your content the last few months going into myself and to address my mild depression, just dropping in to maybe ask some stuff. Yeah, Chris, do feel free if you're still there, man. Sorry, the signal dropped out or something happened. But I'm happy. You know, with depression, coming from like a body-based and kind of Reichian perspective, what you do with depression, a big way of understanding it is that we can bring energy into us, but it doesn't really stay there. We don't have enough of a psychological vessel. You know, we don't have strong enough boundaries. You know, and so this is a big reason why we can get depressed. We can get depression because, you know, it's kind of simple if you think about it. You know, I mean, you go to a lot of psychiatrists or cognitive neuroscience and you start to read something about depression and you think after about 2 minutes, God, I wish I didn't read this because my brain is exploding and I feel like I need a PhD if I'm going to understand this stuff. But no, it's actually not so difficult from the kind of more Reichian or body-based perspective. Depression is when you either aren't getting enough energy inside of you or you can't hold the energy in, and it's usually a bit of a combination of both, and mostly it's the sense of boundaries. What happens when you don't have a close enough connection with your mama when you're like 6 months old, in the first year of your life basically, is that we tend to keep the boundary open and seek to merge. You know, that's basically how we go through life. And so when you don't have that close connection with your mama, some part of you is always seeking the mama. You know, so we don't have a strong enough sense of boundaries energetically, psychologically, and we can't really hold energy. And what often happens to people like that, you know, every now and again they'll get a burst of energy in their mind, like a new plan or a new idea, and they're like, yeah, I'm up for this, and they're filled with energy for a period of time, and then there's one little knockback to the idea and they collapse completely. Now, this is a very common mechanism of depression, and even if you don't quite get that, but it resonates with you, this lack of being able to hold energy inside, you know, it's to do with boundaries. And this is where someone needs to work, you know. It kind of frustrates me sometimes in that it's not that there's simple treatments or cures for some of these things, anxiety, depression and stuff, but there's a lot more that could be done in my opinion, and it's just not happening, you know, it's just not happening. Just things get more and more complicated and scientific, but the basic kind of human wisdom is kind of lost. But nevertheless, if you have suffered a lot of depression and it's not really into extreme clinical levels, then this kind of approach is really worth checking out. It's really worth checking out how to hold more energy in your body and not let it leak out, so that you feel like, yeah, I can get stuff done. Yes, I can move forwards. I have energy for today. When I talk to a lot of depressed people, often they have a lot of ideas. You know, they have great ideas of stuff they could do in their life, but they just don't have the energy inside to get them up vertical and doing it. There's actually a lot you can do, you know. And it's kind of with depression, it's like also finding something that someone can do that's appropriate for their kind of personality type. You know, right now in Brighton, in the UK, it's the middle of the winter, or it's December anyway, near the winter solstice, you know, and the sea just down the road from me is like 10 degrees centigrade, which is cold, bloody cold. And if you were to go in there for 5-10 minutes every day and then come out again, you would probably not get depression, basically. But that is, you know, because it just pounds your body with so much kind of feel-good chemicals and energy. You know, it's quite a journey, and it's not an easy thing to do for 10 minutes, and you get after drop when you come out and blah, blah, blah. But nevertheless, that would, for most people with mild levels of depression, that would probably cure them. But from there, you know, it's like, okay, but is that appropriate for everybody? You know, is that something everyone can commit to or want to do? You know, there's also different approaches, but I'm just giving an example that there's actually a great deal more that could be done for many people, and you just have to find what's the right approach for that person and, you know, what works. Let me check with you. Read Depression by Lowen, and it's helped change my understanding of depression. I noticed my relationship with my mum needs work. I've closed off to her, and I think that has relevance. Yeah, I found a lack of energy to enjoy like a pleasure. Yeah. I mean, there's the whole thing. You know, I worked a lot with emotional expression as well. You know, and getting out there and screaming and putting out the anger and stuff. I did a decade and a half of that kind of stuff, and I was teaching it as well. And these days, actually, with the depression, I'm more inclined to, you know, getting the boundaries of the vessel working well, which means getting more energy in your belly, basically, and then building up the energy in your psyche, doing stuff which which gives you energy, and then making sure you're not just kind of dissipating it, all over the place. And bioenergetics in the morning is very good for depression. But of course, like I say, it's got to be horses for courses, and the person has to be the kind of person that can just get up and do stuff like that, or it's not going to work for them. But it is kind of a shame, when I look at society, sorry, that there is really a lot that could be being done for these low-level mental health conditions that totally isn't happening. We come from this super mindy society full of people with PhDs, but they often don't understand basic conditions themselves. And I think a part of it is because, developing this super intelligent mind, which I also did to a degree, it's kind of getting a bit old and rusty and useless now, but, part of that is a reaction to trauma. Part of that is a reaction to trauma as well. It's coming into the mind and living in this world of thinking, trying to be a kind of winner in this world of thinking, to compensate for the deficiencies that crept in childhood and the defense strategies that we adopted. So, in a sense, if we're going to develop a kind of healthy psychology, it's probably going to have to come from the ground up and from people. It's probably not going to come from the hierarchy of psychology or the health service. It's just not going to come from them. There's a lot that can be done, but the way the system works is they all want evidence-based trials and studies, and they can't really do this and you can't really do that, and it's just like a grand kind of circus that goes round and round to me, and it is a shame. It is a shame. Likewise, with anxiety, which is another huge mental health condition. Really, it's simply that we need to feel our body more and try to stop being in such fear of the sense of the body. And that's really, once you start to move towards it, you can actually do a lot. Once you start to move towards feeling more, you can do a lot. And then slowly you come out of the anxiety and you feel okay, and you're not so controlled by a need to, please people or get along with people. You feel like, hey, I am okay as I am, and maybe some people like me and maybe some people don't, and some people are triggered positively, negatively, whatever, but I am who I am in the moment, and I don't need to apologize for that or start trying to unnecessarily fiddle around with it. So trauma, whether it's traumatic conditioning over a period of time or whether it's a single incident of trauma, that occurred, you can get over it. It's as simple as that. You can get over it. But, you have to maybe look a little bit outside the mainstream if you've tried the mainstream, and look towards the body, look towards Reich, Lowen, the kind of work I do and this kind of thing. And you can get out of it. And it's actually quite understandable as well. I found some of these riders on trauma make it incredibly complicated, but really you need to get the charge out of the body so that your psyche's not charged and you're more balanced in your feelings. And then you just need to orientate your mental behavior so you're not, dragging yourself down all the time. Because a lot of people have low self-esteem, and low self-esteem is just a defense. It's just a defense. It's like keeping your head down. This expression I think came from the First World War when the British and the French and Germans, we were all in the trenches fighting and stuff, and if you have your head up, then something bad would happen, basically. So you learn to keep your head down, and likewise in childhood, many of us learn to keep our head down in childhood, to survive childhood. Don't be big, don't come out and make a lot of noise, don't do stuff, keep your head down. And it's just unfortunately characteristic of humans, but once we've kind of allowed those behaviors to go in as a little kid, we tend to just keep doing them throughout life, and it's kind of crazy when you look at it from the outside, but that is what happens. And so things like low self-esteem are essentially a defense, and when you understand this, you can start to stop indulging in it, and just become bigger, wear better clothing, make more noise, go out into the world and do your thing. And to do it without being quite so controlled by just fear, so dominated by fear. Got my little mug of OXO here, good British drink. So if you've got a question about trauma or anything else about psychology, I'm happy to do it. I've found muscular tension in my stomach region. It's hard to let my belly out. Seems the abs are chronically contracted. I mean, something to really do is to work on getting energy in your belly, because, and get a grounding circuit, which is really from the belly down to the soles of the feet, get it operating, because a lot of upper body tension will just fall away once you get this kind of grounding circuit going from the belly down to the soles of the feet. Because what happens for most people is they're trying with their mind to run their life, and actually their body could run vast amounts of their life much better, starting from the belly. Once you have a sense of awareness in your belly, once you can feel your belly, it's there in your experience of your body, just as you sit or you move around or whatever, you have this natural boundary and defensive capacity there. Your mind doesn't have to be on super alert, because you can do it. And when your mind's on a lot of alert, it's keeping your upper body tense, it's keeping these regions tense. So what's characteristic in bioenergetics, and especially the way I teach it, is we don't always work with the muscle groups that are tense. I tend to work in the core of the body, and once the core is established and coming back online, then the other stuff just tends to, it tends to sort itself out. It tends to sort itself out. Because what's happened for most people is they're lacking the core and they're lacking the grounding. And once you've got the core back, once you've got the belly back, which is really the core energy center, once you've got that, then a lot of other stuff is going to start to come okay. Whether it's around your friendships or your love life, sex life, how you are at work, how you are with hierarchies, how you are with authority, this kind of thing. A lot of it will start to get better once you start to get the energy in the belly. Basically, it's just the start track to getting better. Cool, man. Thank you. Yeah, it's like, this is how I approach it. And what's kind of useful about it is that you don't need to spend a lot of time in diagnosis. Some people like diagnosis, and I can also understand that. And I kind of like the Reichian character types, and I've been learning more about that, and I'm writing a book about that next year, in fact, to try and bring that back in, because it's kind of faded away since the 70s and 80s. But you don't necessarily need to know a lot about it. You just start getting basic circuits of a body functioning again, and you realize, like, whoa, my life's getting better. You don't particularly have to think about it a great deal, or even go through some long complex process in your mind. You just realize you feel more comfortable in your body, and more comfortable to go after what you want, more comfortable to hold boundaries up to what you don't want, and life just gets better. Basically, life just gets better. And that's bioenergetics, really, the way I see it. What I like about it is you just don't need to think very much. And I think that probably appealed to me, because my mind has never functioned, whilst it's been quite intelligent at times, my brain, it's never functioned all that well as I've seen it, and I've never often, feel like, I could really, rely on my mind to get my life together. And learning bioenergetics, I realized that I didn't really have to. That you can cut the mind out of it a little bit. You don't really need it. I mean, you're in a posture and you've got to breathe and feel the body. You have to remember to do that. You have to remember what the posture looks like and that kind of thing, which requires a little bit of mental work. But it is nevertheless the case, in my experience, that you really do not need so much mental activity to heal yourself. And of course, once you've kind of got that, once the mind itself has got that it's kind of more in the way than it's helping, then the mind can be quite useful as well. Just reading about characterology. I'm often writing about characterology and writing pieces or creating videos, and it gives me feedback. I'm writing stuff down. I'm like, whoa, that's me totally. I'm still running that. I'm still running that pattern in my life. I'm still being an endurer there. I'm still behaving like an oral there. So then the mind comes in and starts to scan your behavior, and it becomes more your friend rather than this kind of entity that's trying to avoid you going into the pain or the anger and try to project this character outside. It kind of changes. Hi Dev, what do you mean as saying energy? I mean, I don't mean it in some kind of scientific sense, but just the feeling of having energy. Sometimes when you look at people, if you look at people, you can spot some who look like they don't have much energy, and others you think, wow, that person's full of energy. So it's more that, it's not like a kind of scientific theory about energy or something like that, or even orgone or chi or prana or whatever. You know, it's more a sense for the person. Some people do seem to be more filled with life than others. And you can do stuff to kind of pump your energy up. You know, you go and work out, and you know you're kind of pumping with feel good chemicals afterwards. And it's simply the case, if you don't have a good sense of psychological boundaries, that stuff will dissipate faster than if you do, basically, if you do. So that's that's the oral type, as I was saying earlier, where we always want to stay open. For a long time I was living in an alternative community in Dorset, and everybody was obsessed with openness, and it was cool as well. I mean, I think it's good to have alternatives to normal society and stuff, but at the same time I started to realize at some point, that an awful lot of people in the alternative or spiritual scene are basically oral. They're oral as hell. They've got this wound from the mother, and then they're gravitating into the spiritual scene because they see it as a way to kind of merge with existence or merge with another, or they want to get into tantra so they can merge with a partner or whatever, and it's all coming out of this, or a big chunk of it is coming out of this oral wound. That's not to dismiss the whole scene entirely, but it's just important to also look. When I first understood the oral character, I was like, whoa, because I'd been immersed in this scene for quite a long time, and it's like, whoa, that's this whole scene is like full of oral characters. My God, that's pretty crazy. I thought we were all just really enlightened beings, So it can be kind of shocking. What's the idea regarding doing the bow? Well, the bow posture, what's complicated about the bow and the arch is that there's different, in America, there's different therapists who call it the other way around or give different expressions, but the bow is standing up, leaning, pressing your pelvis forwards, but looking straight ahead. And it will open up the shoulder blades. It opens up the hip area. It's a really great posture. It gets your energy to stand up a bit. It gets you to stand up in a certain way. And when you come forwards into the counter stretch, the arch posture, that's like a surrender posture somewhere psychologically. And so it's useful to work on these two poles. For the average individual, the capacity to stand up and take a position for themselves is important, and the capacity to surrender and go with the flow is important. If you can only do one or neither, it's not really going to work in your life. If all you can do is stand up and take a position, you'll be fighting endlessly, and at some point, you might even get successful, but at some point, it's going to get a lot of stress and tension in your body. And if all you can do is surrender and go with the flow, you're going to end up in a lot of situations where you think, God, I wish I didn't end up in this situation. Why didn't I say no? Why did I go to that? Why did I do that? And all of this. So with the bow and the arch, the bow is on some energetic level, it's pulling your energy up your body and straightening it out a bit, and the arch is learning to surrender. It's supporting us when we do this posture regularly. It's supporting us psychologically to be able to do these things. And also on an energetic level, the arch in particular is starting to clear stuff out of the lower back, help us feel the lower back more, feel the backs of the legs more, often areas where there's a lot of tension. I notice for me it's easy to cry when I arch down. Wow, that's interesting, man. Interesting, yeah. Well, that would make sense. It's got that kind of surrender to it. So do feel free to put in a question. If you've got any questions about trauma, take a risk and put it out. It's also useful because people watch these videos afterwards, and then, sometimes people say to me like, wow, that guy asked that question and it was really helpful. I really needed to understand that myself. Someone who watches the video like 4 months later, I'll have a sip of my drink. Trauma also manifests, in many different ways socially. I'm seeing a lot of people, and myself, I went through this, with this whole COVID situation, people distrusting authority and the official narratives and that very often points back. We never really know the truth as I see it, but it very often points back to early childhood as well, and not having a proper relationship with authority as kids. In some ways down to the kind of industrial society that we're all brought up in. The dads are not as present as they were in kind of hunter-gatherer culture, or if you look at, other primates and mammals, the dads are much more present. But with the industrial culture, the dads are not so present. And because the dad is biologically, genetically, the kind of authority figure in our life, if a relationship with the dad isn't right, or he's just tired all the time or whatever from his job, you know, it can set up in us quite a difficulty to be in a structure where there's clear authority, and we tend to go along with it physically, but in our mind we're like, nah, I'm not, I don't believe this, I'm not doing it, And so, with a situation that like COVID comes along, and then, we're being told that we've got to do this, we've got to do that, and da, 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 da. Of course, it's like a lot of people are like very, very suspicious. And that kind of points back a lot to the early childhood in the way I see it as a psychologist. I get it too, I get it too. But it kind of points back when I lived a bit in the early 90s or mid 90s in Thailand, I mean, and the Thais are like totally different, they're just totally into authority, it's cool, they few of them were brought up in such an industrial culture. I've never been like a psychologist in Thailand and stuff, but I was intrigued to see just how I considered it subservient to authority they were, but how they just naturally said, oh, boss says that, cool, prime minister says this, no problem, that's how it is, it's like, and I suspect it's because their link with their dad was just stronger. I don't know for certain, but that's what I suspect, that father-child relationship was better, and so they had a better experience of getting a good experience from authority as kids, and it didn't create this huge kind of wound around authority and the inner world and uniqueness and the other aspects of it. So that's it's a way that in many ways certain aspects of the Western childhood are now playing out with all the conspiracy theories and and all the kind of resistance to the vaccines and whatever, is like a kind of comes around, goes around aspect to it. Do we need to feel and go through fear, anxiety, sincerely heal our trauma? I mean, actually no, probably, but that's it depends a little bit who you ask, what side of therapy you come from. Some therapists will be very strongly into feelings and the use of human feelings, and there's nothing wrong with human feelings, and it's great, Basically, we need some way to get the charge out and then to kind of heal some of our mental behavior. That's the bottom line for me with trauma. So whether you do that by crying a lot of stuff out, which feels like a huge release and is always very exciting to feel a lot, or to get really enraged, whether you do it like that, or whether you do it by getting the charge out some other way with bioenergetics or whatever, is up to you. I tend to find that my suspicion is the bio goes a bit deeper, but it's not so exciting. It used to be exciting in the group room, screaming and shouting a lot and being, I don't mean that like ironically or something. It's like, when I first could really cry my guts out, it felt like such a relief. It felt like such a relief just to completely let it go, But in my opinion, there's also been, because the way a lot of repressed emotions manifest and a lot of repressed charge manifest is in a feeling like, oh, if I could just really cry, or if I could just get really enraged and scream, then I would be okay. That kind of idea often comes up in our mind, but it's not necessarily completely accurate in my experience. But so I'd say, you want to be open to feelings as a human being. You want to be able to feel emotional pain and to feel anger. They're the basic poles of human emotion. And when you're comfortable with those, you will naturally feel kind of self-love. Love is on the inside, the state of kind of presence of the acceptance of yourself. So you have those 2 or 3 poles of emotion, depending on how you look at it. And once you can access those, that's another approach to treating trauma. Just increase your practice expressing anger, with other people in intense situations in the group room, not in the bank or something, but out in the group room, and practice, crying, weeping, letting it go again in therapy sessions, and practice giving yourself love, feeling love for other people, and that's another approach to healing trauma, expanding your capacity to feel. I've found that with the bio, it kind of does the same, but it's more subtle and not so kind of exciting. not so kind of exciting. It's also a bit cheaper and kind of easier to find as well. And fear, fear really, I mean, I just see fear as like a layer of holding around any deeply repressed emotion. You know, when I first started doing therapy, I hadn't cried for like a decade, at least a decade, and there was a lot of fear around crying, around surrendering, around letting go. I had a lot of fear about it. I couldn't just do it. What someone else could maybe just do, just let go completely and just cry and weep. I couldn't do that. I couldn't do it. And it wasn't just through stubbornness in my mind. It had become ingrained in my body and in my being through years of not doing it. And this fear builds up like this, like a layer around anything we haven't done for a long time. It builds up like this. And, we have to just keep moving towards something. Hi Devaraj, thank you for your channel. Hi Renata. How do I stop the same scenario repeating in my life? I mean, the bottom line is there's a couple of things, it's like, it's great that you become aware of it for a start, that's really, really important, Something I often, when I'm chatting to clients or whatever, something, and I've been through it, is always being attracted to the same kind of partner, even though like third time around, this is not going to work, but you just find them so attractive, this kind of thing. And it's because, again, you can look inside, you have to work it out a little bit, what's really going on. And there's different approaches, If it is around a choice of partner and the kind of psychological type that you're attracted to, whether it's a partner or friends or whatever, or just a situation in your life that isn't working, there's going to be something in it that manifests for you. The people who are often the most attractive to us are the ones who we perceive as embodying a quality, but we don't think we can give ourselves, Someone who's got low self-esteem and feels very disempowered, who believes they have no real authority or power, will be attracted to someone powerful or someone they perceive as powerful because, they want to get the power and they don't believe they can give it to themselves, so they think, I have to get it from the outside. Makes sense, huh? Likewise, if you're very rigid and kind of not really very heart-centered at all, and you struggle to feel deep emotions, you'll probably be attracted to someone who has that emotional fluidity. If you're very kind of, controlled also, you might be attracted to some sort of hysterical, extreme kind of person, it's good to look what the person or the situation that you're constantly attracted to what does it symbolize to you, and what does that say about your own personality, and then look for a way. When I was having a phase of just being attracted to super hysterical women, crazy plate smashing Spanish speaking types, it was good for me to look and say, wow, I'm not really living my own crazy side out, I'm too much in control still, and that was what was causing the attraction, because we will project outwards the aspects of ourselves that we've disowned and try to bring them into our lives in another way. And of course it doesn't usually work. You can get codependent relationships which work for a while, but ideally you don't want to be in a strongly codependent relationship for a long time. It's just not going to be nourishing. So there's that aspect to it, work out what it is that's attracting you to the situation. Find out what that is, and then look, how can I give that to myself? That's one approach. I mean, if you want to give more detail, I can try a little bit more. But, it's that there will be a personal message and a lesson in there for you, and I can guarantee that, it's just kind of written into the hardware of life somewhere, that the situations that repeatedly attract, that they're trying to point us to something. They're trying to point us to something, and we just have to sit down and look, figure out what it is, and start working with it. Often there's a deep fear in there somewhere, a deep fear. So I found myself thinking that if only I do this, I'd overcome my depression. I don't want to have expectations. Yeah, I mean, it's like, the thing with these things also is there's these kind of circular mental patterns and behavioral patterns which go on, So, people kind of puff themselves up getting ready to, okay, I'm going to go to the gym every day for the next month, and then they do 3 days, and on day number four, oh, I can't be bothered, and they don't do it. And then by day number five, they're beating themselves up and bringing themselves back down again, and it's like, at some point again, it's a pattern that you have to see, that I'm creating situations where I will inevitably fail at some point so that I can beat myself up, collapse back into my low self-esteem, and I'm just stuck there. It's defense. It's defense. This is a key insight. It's not some tragic psychological mechanism. It's not that you're bad or wrong. It's just that you're protecting yourself from success, basically. You're protecting yourself from being a successful human being because the prospect of actually being successful is scary. That's why we prefer to look at it on Instagram, basically, rather than actually go out there and live it, because it's scary to be successful, whether it's financially successful or successful with friendships, successful in a love life, whatever you desire success in. And so these patterns of, self-hijacking patterns like this, they come in and then we repeatedly do them, and the bottom line is you just have to say, I'm just going to stop doing that, It's like, don't make a big drama out of it, because that's also feeding the pattern. When you set a target for yourself, make sure it's realistic. If you have a history of kind of giving yourself big targets and then collapsing before you can reach them, you can pretty much guarantee that you're doing that to set yourself up for failure, and it's defense. You're defending yourself against success because success is scary. So with something like depression, you just need to work at it maybe more slowly. You can go down the psychotherapeutic route and uncovering childhood and things like this. This is useful. You can also go down the body work, the bioenergetics route, or you can just find a way to keep your energy moving that's realistic and working for you. So there's a whole heap of different approaches. The UK now, they even give you like gym memberships, because it can also work. In traditional psychotherapy, they would have been appalled at that. Give someone a gym membership, no, because they want you to unravel the cause of your depression in your relationship with your mum or your dad, or whatever else happened as a kid, and there may be some roots there, but you don't always have to do that, and it doesn't always work anyway. So it's like you have to just try different stuff, see what works for you, and just be a bit kind on yourself, but also don't just collapse. Don't just set yourself up for failure. Just take step by step and move forwards. You can do it at the end of the day. You can, and it's like just applying ourselves, taking action. We can do stuff. Okay, guys. If anyone else has got a question and feeling brave, just stick your question out. I'm going to do another 10 minutes, 15 minutes or something like that. So just put it out. I'm writing this book on success. It's been kind of interesting because I really come to realize, where, this whole scene around success has kind of gone a bit mad and collapsed, in that people started discovering about 10, 15 years ago that you could become really successful by being a success coach, So this introduced a kind of weird element to it, whereas previously, really successful businessmen or really successful kind of lovers or whatever, would talk about their skills and how they learned them. And then it kind of degenerated, or rather it just changed to people became successful financially through talking about success and being success coaches. But when that happened, they had to start competing with each other, and so they had to make it look easier and easier. And it's kind of curious because now we have social media and we have so much access to information, and yet I was writing this book about success, which originally was going to be about bioenergetics and about bioenergetic workouts and training the body for success. But I ended up doing about 25,000 words or 20,000 words on just the mind strategies of success, a lot of which had been covered before, but I realized that a lot of the information had disappeared from view because it wasn't really sexy and exciting, and you couldn't really market it well on Instagram, So it's like it's quite possible to write down a lot of strategies which really support someone to be successful in a quite grounded kind of normal human way, but that doesn't really happen anymore. It doesn't really happen anymore because the success coaches have to compete and have to keep saying, do this one life hack and your life will be wonderful, to make money and to stay in the game, so to speak. So anyway, I'm rambling a little bit now, but I uncovered this process writing this book about success, and now it's, instead of being training your body for success, it's going to be training your body and mind for success. So that's coming out next year, and I'm enjoying writing it. Actually, I'm enjoying writing it. I've been doing lots of somatic healing work for the last 2 years or so. I've done some bio along with some somatic practices. Thanks for your content. Thanks, Tom. Cool, man. I'm happy to hear you're getting into the body stuff. Hey, it's like it's so needed. It's so needed. More and more, we seem to be trying to get everything from the mind or Zoom or YouTube or whatever. And it's like, God. I mean, sometimes people are like it's my birthday next month, and I was going to have this Zoom party, but half of me is like, I don't want to have a bloody Zoom party. I will do it, but like I don't really want to. It's like, I don't know if I have to look at another screen for any longer or something. It's like enough now. It's like enough. I want normal people and pubs and human contact and cafes and stuff like that. But it is what it is. It's like we I guess as a race we're exploring the world of the screen and connecting through that, and interesting new stuff does happen as well. Interesting new stuff happens as well. So if you're watching and you have got a question, do take a moment to stick it out. Do take a moment to stick it out. Yeah, it's like, wow. Here in the UK, we're getting the vaccine soon, which is going to be kind of fun. I think a lot of people are kind of up in arms about it. I'm not super triggered by vaccines personally, but I don't know. I don't want to rattle on about it anyway and make it political or anything. But I would ask, what do you think of subconscious programming the mind? I've seen that some stuff just stucks with you. These characteristics received from parental figures, and just help with those. Just yeah, I mean, you mean stuff like EFT, emotional freedom technique, and that with tapping. I'm very, the way I see it is if something works for you, go for it. Just go for it. And for some people, it really does work. They say that a good way to use these kind of associations, or what's the word, affirmations, is so even though I still sometimes collapse, I'm going to keep on. You have to kind of accept the negative behavior that you do, but even because of it, you're going to still move forwards. They say that one works better than just, I am going to keep moving forwards, even though I sometimes collapse. I'll forgive myself straight away and pick myself up and keep on going, or whatever, with affirmations. I really, I'm pretty open to, if something works for someone, it works for them, and it's as simple as that. I don't see all this need for competition and this therapy is totally wrong. There are people in the body scene who've got massive trips about emotional expression, like it's just the ultimate evil and it's going to re-traumatize you forever or something. And it's just like, I'm like, I'm not going to swear on the thing, but I'm like, what the, it's like, it's just like, it's hard for me to comprehend sometimes that these people are actually in the body-based world. It's just how it is. If something's working for you, it's great. And I think the level of human suffering in reality is so high. Anything that's doing stuff to relieve that and to make us feel more grounded and more loving and can hold better boundaries, and we can open ourselves when we want to. Anything give ourselves pleasure. Anything that's improving on that level has to be celebrated and accepted. Really, it's simple as that. You can't. This whole competitive thing with this therapy is better than that one, and never do that because something terrible will happen. All of this kind of stuff. I don't. I can understand it. I can see how people can go there, and I can go there myself. But I don't feel good with myself after I've gone there. Now I'm getting besieged by questions. Okay. Pat Varat, definitely relate to not feeling like my brain has ever worked super well. Yeah, just starting to study counselling now at 23, and I'm quite terrified and not sure if I can do it. I want to do it because I get these surges of energy when I really feel called, but yeah, feeling I just don't really have what it takes. Bios helps a lot. Yeah, man, I think you should stick with it. I think you should stick with it. Something to remember about the brain is that it's super flexible as well. I mean, at 23, even your prefrontal cortex hasn't even finished developing, man. It's like, I learned, with writing and starting to write stuff, just do it. Just do it. Just do it. So, and then your brain will it will just get on board at some point. If you're drawn to counseling, if you're drawn to working with people, it's very nourishing to work with people, and it's needed. So just go for it. Other people are messaging me saying they can't get their questions through. The people around us can put us off going for success, yes. If you make improvements, you can feel like an annoying, happy person. Yeah, you can. You just have to put up with that, really. Or in my case, at some point, I dropped loads of friendships. Basically, that's the reality, I just had to drop them, because too many wasters and the crabs in a barrel metaphor, everyone knows it, it's all these crabs stuck in their bucket or whatever, and one gets up to the top and just about pulls itself out, and the others reach up and pull it back down again, and being brought up in the UK, I know that one totally, and at some point you have to decide, do I want to fit in with the people around me, or do I want to be successful? We have two drives. We want to fit in with society, or we want to have friends and be a part of some culture and society, and we want to find ourselves. And you have to honour both, and sometimes you have to drop one to get the other working. It's just how it is. There's always a way. But that's a good observation, Chris. I may try bioenergetic therapy online via Zoom. Thoughts of this superior person. Yeah, man. Also, if you're interested, check out the journey, which is this 52-week online course that I run, which you can just sign up for any time, and it doesn't matter what time zone you're in. It's video content, and then you can reach out to me. There's a chat group for people on it, and we have weekly sharings and stuff. That's working for about 55 people at the moment who are on it. Not all of them are totally engaged, but a good chunk of people are totally engaged, and it's really, it's a 52-week course, and for a lot of people it'll take even 2 years to do it, but you get a lot of slow, permanent transition through that, and you come to really understand what's going on inside. So I'm pretty happy with that thing. It just had its first birthday. I've got a message from a chap I know here. I've got to try and find it. I'm not really sure how I'm going to be able to do that without switching off this live thing. So I want to be a little bit careful. Oh God, it's coming and going now. But this chap asked me, what was my experience with bioenergetics as a catalyst for traumatic experiences. I can't read it at the same time as the thing, and I haven't quite fully got the question because the stream was fading out. But when you become a therapist, it's not like, well, now I'm super healed, and that's me, I'm just great, like the Fonz or something. Someone you probably won't remember. But it's like you're on a journey of awareness, basically, and becoming a facilitator, becoming a therapist, working with people, you're just continuing your own journey, because you come up constantly against situations, trying to become successful. You're continuing your own journey with awareness, understanding yourself, understanding the world, moving out into the world, So as we go deeper, we uncover more and more layers of what's going on inside of us. I'm still clearing out a ton of stuff from inside of me. That's the reality of it. That's just the reality of it. And I can have self-judgments about that if I want to, if I want to beat myself up for a bit. But I don't really bother. I just accept that that's the way it is. And also, I don't try and portray myself as some fully healed guru character, despite my advancing years. I don't see the point in that. I do well enough with my therapist work, being myself, but I don't really have to, kind of fake it a lot, and sometimes people give me feedback how I should market this and market that, and I'm like, I'm not really bothered, I'd rather just be myself and do my thing and, let that resonate with people. I think there's a lot of bullshit in marketing, and it's not really helping a lot of people. They're just becoming very mechanistic in their mind, and probably for the majority of them, they're not getting very far in life through that, Take off now. Yeah, cool, Chris. Nice to connect with you, man. Just drop me a line sometime if you want to chat more, or if you're interested in this the bioenergetic journey. No worries, man. Cool. I'm not quite sure about this question the other guy asked, Antonio, but the journey just continues. It just continues, and probably at some point most of the stuff that's going on inside of you, and you get more bodily awareness. You can feel where the blocks are inside your own being, physically. inside your visceral sense of the body, and you become aware psychologically, whoa, I'm really scared of going into that kind of situation, or I'm really putting up a defense in that kind of situation, you know. You slowly develop more awareness. The bottom line for me is awareness, you know. This is what it's really about, you know. It's what it comes back to, you know. Because you can easily develop all this knowledge of healing strategies and blah blah blah, but only awareness heals at the end of the day, you know. That's it. It's that looking inside and saying, okay, what's going on for me in that situation, and why can't I move forwards in life there? What's holding me back? You know, maybe it tracks back to something in childhood and we need to work with that. Maybe it tracks back to something in childhood, but we don't actually need to work with that. We just need to keep moving forwards towards something anyway. When you kind of grasp the concept of self-awareness, and you understand that on a deep level, this experience we're all having on this earth is an awareness experience. You know, that's what it's about. You know, when you understand that, when you've got that, it's like, okay, the penny dropped, you know, and then you can go out in life with a kind of a lust for experience, you know, and for going for what you want. You know, you don't have to be caught up in your mind in all of these kind of strategies to try and get things, and you're never really being straight with yourself, you know. So that if you want something, you can move towards it and learn from it, you know, because often we move to, you know, people fantasize, you know, where I come from, people fantasize about money, you know, and they just fantasize about it and they never have it. You know, 99 out of 100 never have it. And so they just keep that fantasy going until they die, basically. And, you know, the reality is if they got all that money at some point, they probably realize it wasn't that great anyway, you know. But it's like they don't get it, so they don't know. So they, you know, you can't take so many shortcuts in life. We have to move towards what we're interested in, even if we have judgments about it, you know, and just learn and find out and understand. I'm just going to check the chat last time. Lifelong journey. Yeah, you know, I think, you know, the thing is like, when I say it's a lifelong journey, I feel like, oh God, that's a real downer, you know, and it's not really the case. But that basic inner looking has to continue, you know, and then you go through certain deep stuff, and at times you're really thrown, you know, you're really thrown, and you just wish life would be boring and normal again, you know, and that's how it is. And other times it's boring and normal, and you just wish some massive process would embark upon you, so you'd be thrown again. And then when it does, you think, oh God, I want to go back to boring and normal. But in all of this, you know, there's an unraveling, and you're clearing stuff out, and you're moving deeper. And I think, you know, when people accept that they need to do a bit of work on themselves to move forwards, you know, then you can be intelligent with it. You know, when you're always trying to quick fix, you know, you end up in this kind of quick fix nowhere land, you know. And when you just kind of surrender, okay, I need to do a certain level of work on myself, you know, then it doesn't have to be a massive drama. It doesn't have to cost a ton of cash. And, you know, it's just like maintaining your car almost, in a way, a rather boring metaphor, but, you know, you just accept that you have to pay a certain bit, you have to do a bit, and then, you know, your life is good. And as you go along on this journey, your life gets better, you know, the friendships get better, the love life gets better, whether it's the partners that you find or whether it's your actual sex life, you know, it gets better. You can feel more, you know, and, you know, your work life gets better, you know, you get more centered, you move towards the kind of jobs that you want to have, and you discover what you do or do not want to have through getting all the experiences. Okay guys, it's been a great pleasure chatting today. So if you do have a last question, I've got about a minute left, then go for it. Otherwise, that's it. Hey, thanks Tom. Nice you tuned in. Hey Chris, cool. Thanks, man. Okay guys, I think it's been a nice stream, and I'm going to try and do them a little bit more often, and, you know, maybe pick a start topic again and see where it goes to, and I will speak to you guys later. Have a good evening, and keep being awesome, and keep doing bioenergetics. I've got to remember how to switch these things off. Can't really remember, you know.